I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We're starting out on the street tonight because we're going to be talking about tents and something that we see in many of our neighborhoods. Homeless campers on the sidewalks, on the streets, in parks, and in natural areas. Back in May of 2020, voters in the metro area passed a tax on couples making $200,000 or more and companies grossing $5 million or more. It's expected to raise roughly $250 million a year for 10 years, totaling $2.5 billion. The money was intended to prevent and reduce homelessness in Washington, Clackamas, and Multnomah counties. But now the folks behind People for Portland want voters to tell those governments they must use 75% of that money to set up shelters for the homeless to get them off the streets. Dan Levy on the right and Kevin Looper on the left with the beard are behind the initiative.
This initiative petition will dedicate 75% of the $2.5 billion over the next 10 years to prioritizing shelters, while also protecting funding for the essential services that go along with shelters. And the theory behind it is we need to get people, as a first step towards housing and safety, off the streets and into shelters.
More to the point, it'll fulfill what we said we were going to do 2 years ago when the Metro $2.5 billion homeless services measure passed, which is address the nightly crisis, humanitarian crisis that's unfolding on our streets.
Their initiative, if it gets to the ballot and wins, would redistribute supportive housing services funds. It would require at least 75% go to creating shelters, although it does not say what kind of shelters. It would also keep diverting that money until there were enough beds for every person on the streets and until communities began enforcing their camping bans, which theoretically they would be able to do because there would be somewhere for the homeless person to go. It would also require audits and prohibit conflicts of interest. No one getting paid by the housing services tax could be on an oversight committee. Finally, it would allow any Metro resident to sue the government if they are not enforcing the new law. There's a Texas-like clause in there, right, where you allow individuals to file suit?
Yeah, I mean, any citizen can take action against their government if they don't think the wishes of the measure are being fulfilled.
Here's what we found. It turns out that politicians do what they want to do most of the time. Allowing citizens to sue, and if they sue and win, have government pay their legal fees, is a really good way to get politicians to remember that they're supposed to do the thing we voted for them to do.
Yeah, it only goes into effect, of course, if the voters overwhelmingly pass it. So all we're really talking about is asking elected officials to follow the will of the people that just voted in favor of providing shelters to help people get off the streets.
As you might expect, the idea is not at all popular with the group overseeing the program now. It's called Here Together Oregon, and Angela Martin is the co-director.
The proposed ballot measure would take away 75% of voter-approved funding from homeless solutions, mental health, addiction services, affordable housing, case management, and put it all towards shelter. That is an approach that has failed time and again. It's an approach that would have failed Rebecca, a woman that recently shared the good news with us that she now has a safe place to call home and a new job, thanks to the case management, rent support, and job training that she got through the voter-approved supportive housing services money.
Martin said in the first 6 months, the new tax created 1,600 shelter beds, prevented eviction for 1,400 families, cleaned 1.2 million pounds of trash off the streets, and will provide housing and services for 2,400 families by June of this year.
So we are moving people off the street, and we need to keep doing it.
Kevin Looper knows those arguments well. He helped put together the coalition that passed the tax in the first place. Now he wants to change it.
Way back when, advocates came to me, as a guy who's done a bunch of ballot measures, and said, you know what, we really need money for the social services to get people off the streets. And so we formed a coalition, had 150 groups around the table, and the whole energy was government's not doing enough fast enough to actually address our homeless crisis that's unfolding every night. It's a humanitarian crisis. And I put together that coalition, I named it Here Together. Here Together was an in-joke at the time, because if you say it real slow, it's here to get her. And our whole goal was to get Lynn Peterson, the head of Metro, to refer the measure to voters when she was saying, I don't want to do that. We got her to do it. We passed the measure, and we told everybody who voted on it that we were going to solve the homeless crisis on the streets. And now, many of those same groups are defending the government, doing nothing, or waiting 10 years to do something, if I'm trying to be more fair. And you're going to hear them trying to defend how hard it is and how long it takes.
I asked Angela Martin what would be so bad with getting 25% of all that money while the rest was spent for shelters.
If you ended up with 25% of $250 million, that's still a big number.
But you don't get 25% of that. Again, 5% off the top by ordinance goes towards a tri-county initiative.
And what does that do? That's not helping with mental health or job skills or any of that?
Those dollars are geared at breaking down a lot of the silos that have made past efforts to addressing homelessness a little more difficult.
So
connecting our
bureaucratic
systems.
silos?
Exactly. Connecting so that our health systems, our criminal justice systems, all of those systems that contribute to homelessness, when they release someone from foster care, when they release someone from jail, we need to connect those systems so that a person isn't released from jail into homelessness. And that's what the regional approach is for. So 5% off the top goes for that. 5% off the top for accountability. We need data collection. We need grants management to make sure that the money's being spent properly.
So 10% or $25 million a year is going for the bureaucracy surrounding the issue. I asked Looper about that.
You feel like there's been an industrial complex that's grown up around the homeless issue?
I don't feel like it, I know it. I know the people involved, I know exactly what their motivations are, and the central problem we have right now is they don't believe we should be addressing the nightly problem that unfolds on the street.
No,
they really do believe that at the end of the day, we should be talking about building apartment buildings at $400,000 a unit and giving people the keys to them and use the streets as a waiting room for that reform. And it is not okay to leave people on the street every night.
Finally, I took the question to Angela Martin.
But again, not a math major, so I may be wrong in my numbers, but 5% of 5%, that's going to be 10% of $250 million is $25 million to break down silos and just do data collection? It seems like a lot of money.
This problem is we finally have the resources that match the scale of this problem. This proposed ballot measure turns the solutions upside down and puts a disproportionate amount into a temporary solution or a temporary services that don't solve someone's homelessness. It diverts our opportunities that are just now scaling up and will put us in a holding pattern that will actually result in people losing their housing.
This is going to be a battle royale. We'll keep an eye on it, let you know how it goes.